Amazing.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words, tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
The nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. It is Thursday, and you know what that means. We got more news. News and politics, and of course, opinion. Hello to everybody watching us live on YouTube. Also, to my Twitch fam. Also, that are watching on twitch.tv/Jeff_Waldorf. So if you haven't already, check us out there as well. All right. Yeah. Twitch, YouTube, love you both. So we're going to have some little bit of fun starting out in the show. So we're going to talk about how some of Donald Trump's staff is starting to get super embarrassed. And I want to, and I have a video to show you that kind of shows why. That's good stuff. Then an update for the certification in Michigan. Turns out those Republican board members of Wayne County backtracked. To backpedal, they say. And we didn't mean to certify Detroit. We don't want to certify Detroit. Well, there's a reason. And I'm going to show you that reason, of course. Then we have a disastrous lawsuit. Just a disastrous situation. Not only did it affect our food supply, of course, but also workers were getting sick, and the bosses were literally betting on how many people would get sick. I mean, it's just disgusting. That's a horrible story. Then we've got Charlie Kirk wants you to go and kill your grandma. And then if we've got time for it, Donald Trump's trying to get rid of more environmental regulations. So that is disastrous. So that said, before we go into the stories, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Apparently some people are hearing an echo. I don't know why. There shouldn't be. Let me see. Mean Beans on Twitch says Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett's husband Jesse announced that he will not be leaving his position at a private law firm, even though his firm will likely end up handling cases for companies that could appear in front of his wife in the Supreme Court. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. It is commonplace for the spouses of justice to leave their firms when the spouse takes a position in the court, but norms have now been thrown out the window. Ring of Fire's Farron Cousins explains what's happening. So Farron does great reporting, so you should check that out, definitely. That is a story that I was not familiar with. I will look into that as well. Again, Farron nailing it over at Ring of Fire, and also on his own personal YouTube channel, too. So check those out. He's got his own that's kind of separate from Ring of Fire. And I'm gonna eventually get him back on the show as well, so we can do some segments together. Lots of fun. All right. With that, apparently nobody can hear some echo, so that's good. All right. Let's move on. Let's get into the first story. Boom. About Donald Trump only hires the best people, the greatest people, the tremendous people. Okay. Donald Trump lost the election. He got less votes. He lost the Electoral College. He's failed to meet every single indicator of any sort of electoral victory. His staff knows this, and yet Donald Trump continues to fight against this, and his staff is starting to get super embarrassed. So right now, the Trump campaign is bringing lawsuit after lawsuit to the courts to try to throw out as many ballots as possible, right? In order to say, oh, the massive voter fraud, that's the only reason, Joe Biden actually got more votes is because we had to have had massive voter fraud. And so, in order to prove it, we're going to bring no evidence, but we're just going to say it's a vast conspiracy and then have you just throw out as many votes as we need to actually win. I mean, they're literally trying to steal the election right in front of us. It's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to use that. All right. Now, in attempting to throw out all these mail-in ballots, right, this administration would basically disenfranchise enormous swaths of black people, Democrats, independent voters, and the few conservatives who also happen to dislike Donald Trump. And there's a few of them, although, again, 93% of registered Republicans voted for Donald Trump. That's an even bigger share than back in 2016. Now, these challenges, again, hinged on the conspiracy theory that there has been massive voter fraud perpetrated by the Democrats. Earlier today, there was a news conference or a press conference where it was alleged that the only way that Biden won is because there was these voting machines, Dominion voting machines that were engineered by Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. I mean, they're really reaching for it. All right, they're reaching. They're calling on Venezuela now. They're like, it's Venezuela, it's Venezuela. This is how Hugo Chavez rigged the votes, and this is how Joe Biden, also the same as Hugo Chavez in their demented minds, it also rigged the election. No. Okay, great. So now, again, this is a conspiracy with zero real evidence to back it up, which is why they cannot present it in court, why all their lawsuits continue to get tossed out of court, and one that is apparently so large and so coordinated and yet incredibly terrible at taking any sort of actual power to have not actually removed Mitch McConnell, who was the biggest block on progressives. I mean, we cannot get any progressive policy passed as long as Mitch McConnell holds the Senate. And so, not only that, but the Democrats in the House lost seats. How is that an effective, voter fraud if it doesn't work? Again, if you have this elaborate conspiracy, you think that they would be better at it, but no, apparently not. It's so ridiculous. It is batshit insane and laughably stupid. All right, but anyway, and now even Donald Trump loyalists, people loyal to Trump, are saying, "Yeah, this is embarrassing, dude." That's, of course, if you believe the liberal rag known as the Wall Street Journal. A bunch of commies over there, let me tell you. They report that even though some loyalists of the president see his attempts to overturn the 2020 election as doomed to fail, and there are quotes. All right. So now these quotes come from anonymous officials, obviously, because the second they say something, Donald Trump will fire them. That's what happens. Donald Trump's on a firing spree, which really shouldn't surprise anybody. That's literally his catchphrase for years on television. All right, but anyway, one quote here. This is from a Trump campaign aide talking to the Wall Street Journal. Quote, there was this period of hope that there was fraud. Wait. Okay, you hope that there was fraud. Right there, this is the evidence of the copium, okay, that they're taking. It's, or more like hopium, I guess, or like, oh my God, Donald Trump, you couldn't have lost. It must be fraud. It must be something else. Please be fraud. Please be fraud. You were literally begging, and I can imagine Trump staffers sitting there as the results pour in after November 3rd, right? As the mail-in ballots, as we have been talking about, because I told you, I told everybody, if you were here watching the election night when I was streaming, you would have seen me talking about, hey, the mail-in ballots are going to come in. They're going to come in after tonight. It's going to be a slow trickle, and they are going to, these states, as they get counted, are going to turn blue, and they're going to go for Biden. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, etc. Nevada. I was actually surprised about Georgia. I thought maybe there was a shot in Florida. Nope, didn't turn out that way. So now they were hoping, though, as this was happening, please be fraud. Please be fraud. It's ridiculous. And so they continue by saying, and then it was, is there really enough fraud? It's starting to get a little embarrassing. There isn't enough fraud. I mean, it's true though. There isn't. There's never been enough to really swing an election, a general election. It's incredibly rare voter fraud. I mean, do you really believe that in a country where a sizable amount of the population doesn't even bother to vote, that people would take the time and face possible punishments to do voter fraud, to try voting twice? Actually, yes. And it just usually happens to be hardcore Republicans. And they almost always get caught. But nonetheless, they're still so infinitesimally small amount of that actually happening. Look, the national fraud rate for voting is somewhere between 0.0006 to 0.00025%. Again, infinitesimally small. You have a higher chance of getting struck by lightning or having a candy machine fall on you than actually perpetrating in-person voter fraud or experience it. It just really doesn't happen. Okay. And so this is out of handful, it's literally a handful out of millions of votes, millions of ballots, hundreds of millions of ballots. And look, even in states where the difference is, you look at you look at it's like 0.2 percentage points, 45, 0.7 or 49.7 or whatever to whatever, right? Math fail. It's ironic because the math for Trump doesn't work. Okay. So you get a difference of 0.2%. That equals to about 10,000 or several thousand votes, depending on the state. Okay. And so the biggest problem with Trump's claims, aside from the lack of evidence, is again, the math that just doesn't work. You have a handful of fraudulent ballots, but you still have a difference of 10 to 14,000 votes. Well, then that handful of possibly fraudulent ballots, it's not really going to do anything. All right. And so it's not going to change the election. And so that's what we're talking about. It's not going to change the election. And if you look at it from more than a surface level view and don't buy into conspiracy theories or you're not a fucking moron, you can see that. So there it is. Now, the Journal. Oh, by the way, before I get to that, the Journal sources talking about Mr. Rudy. We're going to bring him here in a minute. Donald Trump is a moron, and that's why he literally believes that, no, I won. It was massive voter fraud, even though I can't prove it. And look, again, part of that's because of how deeply unintelligent he is. And the other part, of course, is that he's surrounded by grifters. The journal sources describe how Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, took control of the case, took control of the efforts to fight against the election results by accusing other advisors of lying to him about having little chance of overturning the outcome. One Trump campaign source tells the paper, quote, "He was the only person telling the president he could win." I'm wondering if that has anything to do with how much Donald Trump is paying Rudy Giuliani. Look, according to multiple people briefed on the matter, speaking to the New York Times, Giuliani had actually been asking for a lot of money since the election. The request, according to the Times, stirred opposition from Mr. Trump's aides and advisors, who appear to have ruled out paying that much, and it is unclear how much Mr. Giuliani will ultimately be compensated. Mr. Giuliani, of course, had been asking for compensation for his work dating back to the day after the election day, when Mr. Trump began publicly claiming that he won despite the results, according to people familiar with the request who asked for anonymity. At $20,000 a day, Giuliani's rate would be above the top-of-the-line lawyers in Washington and New York who can charge as much as $15,000 a day if they're spending all of their time working for that client. And it looks like Donald Trump is getting what he paid for because, well, of stuff like this.
Right up. So what we're telling you is supported by evidence. And we're going to have to present these because of the procedures that exist. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, we more than double.
This guy's a mess. He's a flop sweat disaster. Wow. Again, get what you pay for. Apparently this man charges a lot, but gets real cheap hair dye. Oh my God. That's awesome. Now, again, he could get $10,000. He can get $15,000, whatever, right? Whatever the campaign pays him. That is unless, of course, he loses, which he will, and Donald Trump decides to stiff him. Oh, that's going to be so good. Oh, that's good. That would be hilarious. And in the words of GOP strategist Mike DeHame, who told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "Donald Trump lost. We shouldn't be telling people it was fraud when it wasn't fraud." Again, there's no evidence of this, right? And really, if you look at it from a conservative perspective, there's no winning here. This is going to hurt Republicans down the line. Let me give you an example. See, if you have a significant number of Republicans, say about half, for example, again, that's not the reality, but half, right? Now, think of half of all Republicans as a result of this election think that, well, voter fraud is so rampant, they stole the election from Donald Trump. Well, then what's the point of voting? What's the point of going out and voting? We've been beaten by the deep state in Venezuela, right? So what's the point? My vote doesn't matter. Well, then they stop showing up, generally, right? And what that would end up being is a disaster for the Republican Party. That's why you have people like Brad Raffensperger, who's a Secretary of State of Georgia, coming out and saying, no, don't do that. No, look, Joe Biden won. It's math. He got more electoral votes. He got more votes overall. Like, that's indisputable. So we follow the math, and that's it. Please don't lose trust in our electoral system. And then, again, that's where you have Republicans that, again, I think a lot of this is motivated out of self-interest, obviously, and also to not appear to be an insane person, because only an insane person is saying massive voter fraud with no evidence to back it up. And so that would be, of course, if this happens, an electoral disaster. And so think about it, though. Republicans normally use voter fraud as a rhetorical device to try to justify voter suppression measures like voter ID, etc. except that their audience is so stupid that they now believe that, like, no, voter fraud is 100% real. We just got the election stolen from us, so I guess my vote doesn't matter. I'm not going to vote. Oops. And look, again, that's great if you're a Democrat, and if you actually want to get shit done. So that's fun. But look, this could have impacts in the Senate. By the way, remember we have a Senate runoff election coming up real soon, and so if enough Republicans say, fuck it, I mean my vote doesn't count, I'm not going to go out and vote. Well, then you could actually see Democrats retake the Senate. I don't know how likely that's going to happen. But hey, Republicans, I guess Donald Trump, go out and keep saying it's rigged and that it's useless to go and vote. Keep embarrassing yourself out of power. Great. Rudy's a face of calmness. That's awesome. All right. It wasn't hair dye leaking out of Rudy. It's just the evil trying to escape. I love these comments. We got this guy who's like melting on stage, Rudy Giuliani, and like the faces. Look at the face. Look at the faces that he makes. Like I think it was I forget who said this. There's a comedian on one of those late night shows that's like, Rudy Giuliani always makes a face of like somebody who accidentally always sits on their own balls. It's true. It's true. Oh, that's so good. Man. Well, all right, let's move on. More serious stuff. Seth Meyers, thank you guys. It was Seth Meyers. Credit where credit is due. That was funny. All right. The election results in Michigan are challenged once again as two Republicans on the election board for Wayne County demanded that they take back their votes to certify the election results for Detroit. So now the pair had originally agreed to a last-minute compromise on Tuesday after seeking an audit for the vote count in the Detroit area, where they said the results were out of balance. Okay. Now, there were some irregularities. There normally are in every single election, except that in Detroit, they're using these irregularities to try to say that, there must be massive voter fraud. And so we cannot certify the results of the election. Whereas, for example, in Livonia, Michigan, which is primarily white suburbs, they had more irregularities of the same kind, but they had no problem certifying Livonia. So it kind of shows you where they're at. All right. So now, again, they complained later on that the only reason that they certified was because they had been threatened. And get this, threatened by Grosse Pointe Antifa. I'm going to get to who those people are. A very, very, very dangerous group. All right. So Monica Palmer, I talked about her on another show, said, quote, "I rescind my prior vote." The board's chairwoman in an affidavit, "I fully believe the Wayne County vote should not be certified." Now, that other GOP member is William Hartman. He signed a similar affidavit, according to the Washington Post. Now, I talked about Hartman before, as I said, and I showed you some of his social media feeds where he's an anti-masker. He's a QAnon conspiracy theorist. He's in the past posted racist things about Barack Obama. And Palmer, I didn't show you anything about her, but she's actually been photographed wearing Trump T-shirts. And so they're big Trump supporters. Now, they believe in the massive voter fraud conspiracy, at least, of course, when it comes to Detroit. When it came to, again, Livonia, which is 90% white, they were fine to sign off on them, but not for Detroit, which happens to be majority black. And going for Joe Biden, of course. Wonder why. Wonder why they wouldn't certify. Now, part of it, we have learned that Palmer actually had received a personal phone call this week from none other than President Donald J. Trump. What a coincidence. Weird. Now, Palmer told the Washington Post that, well, Donald Trump had called, but, he only expressed concern about my and Hartman's safety. Oh, okay. Quote, there were general comments about different states, but we really didn't discuss the details of the certification. Right. Sure. Look, I don't know what was said. I don't know. I wasn't there. I didn't listen to the phone call. We don't have any witnesses. He could have said anything, or he could have been saying exactly what she was saying. I don't know. All I know is that it's kind of sus. A little bit. And so, especially since there was a phone call at some point this week, I don't know the timing of it. And look at that. They took back their certification after Tuesday. That's weird timing. Real strange. As for why, again, Palmer and Hartman complained in their affidavits they believed that they had a firm commitment to an audit when actually they didn't. Palmer said she felt misled because Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson did not view their resolution asking for an audit as binding. And well, there's a reason for that, because it wasn't binding. The board's Democratic Vice Chairman, Jonathan Kinloch, said the board hadn't formally asked for an audit, and he said the two GOP members were aware that the resolution was not binding when they agreed to it. So now, who do you believe? The people who are giant Trump supporters, believe in QAnon and these conspiracy theories, and won't sign off on Detroit on certifying the election results, an election which is actually one of the most secure elections in American history, that there is no evidence of voter fraud that they can bring to the court, and they've had plenty of chances, or this Democrat, Mr. Kinloch. I know who I believe. Just saying. Kinloch said the certified results, by the way, had already been sent to the Secretary of State. And so even though they rescind their votes, it's too late. It's already been certified. It's already in the hands of the Secretary of State, of Ms. Benson. So, sorry. Did they not know that? Did they not? Are they too stupid to understand that, once this goes out, do they not know the process? If they don't know the process, why are they on the board? Why is their job is incredibly important to certify election results. And if you're too dumb to know your job, then why are you on the job? Why? That's a good question. I'm not saying Trump supporters are stupid, but that one sure, those two sure are. I know. Of course, they're saying that. No. You don't understand. We were pressured into it. We were pressured. Right. Sure. Now, Kinloch actually did accuse them of bowing to pressure, not from social media, not from the left, but from Republicans, the White House and the RNC. Ronna McDaniel, for example, complained that Palmer and Hartman had been, quote, subjected to mob rule. Oh, mob rule. Right. Okay. Kinloch said, quote, do they understand how they're making us look as a body? We have such an amazing and important role in the democratic process, and they're turning it on its head. Well, look, Republicans have proven over and over again that they don't really care about the democratic process, at least unless they win. When they win, they're like, we're silent majority. Just suck it up, snowflakes. We won fair and square. MAGA baby, fuck yeah. But when they lose, they cry and cry and cry. Voter fraud, oh my God, where's the voter fraud? But there's not voter fraud. Where's the evidence of your voter fraud? Bring us tangible proof that can be proven, and then we will take this seriously, because guess what? We actually do care about democracy. We do care about levels of fraud, and we've done numerous studies on it. And you know who else has done a study on it? Done an investigation into it? The Trump administration. And what did they find? Nothing. Nada. No, that voter fraud commission found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. But they're going to cry anyway. Now, at one point, by the way, these two complained about being targeted by something called the Gross Point Antifa. Gross Point Antifa. Here's journalist Kayla Rubel. Quote, I can confirm from text shown to me that Wayne County Republican canvasser says she received threats post-meeting. She says they come from both sides, the right and the left, specifically Antifa from Grosse Pointe. Yes, Michiganders, you read that last part correctly. So now look, those of you who are not from Michigan, you're probably like, what? Grosse Pointe Antifa, what? Well, let me spell it out, all right? So Grosse Pointe is a suburb of Detroit and is actually literally the wealthiest part of Michigan. So this is where, the wealthy people go to retire. And they're infamous for literally building a wall to keep black people from Detroit from coming into that part of the suburb. They even put a farmer's market in the middle of the road in order to block people from Detroit. That's Grosse Pointe. You think Grosse Pointe is like, what? Is the home of like Antifa? Are you fucking kidding me? Again, Grosse Pointe Park, Grosse Pointe Shores, it's a literal retirement community for rich conservatives. The average income of somebody living in Grosse Pointe Farms is around $130,000 a year. Hey man, look, if people there are woke enough to be part of Antifa, oh yeah, great. Don't forget Bloomfield Hills Antifa, yes. Hey, look, if they're woke enough, good on them, I guess. But for me, the whole thing just sounds like a giant load of bullshit. Gross Point Antifa. All right. Anyway, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back. More serious stories here, including Tyson Foods getting sued for well, you know what? I'm not gonna spoil it. So we'll have that story right after the break. And then Charlie Kirk wants you to kill grandma. So awesome. Fun times. Stay right here. I'll be back in a minute. Round the nation.
I have not loved this conversation.
Tighten up my meat. I like my meat tight.
Wait, you're getting nervous, man.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the nation right here, Waldorf Nation. You have Waldorf here with you. So before I get into super chats and stuff, I do want to thank a couple of patrons. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. I want to thank Ani Hassis and Manmade. I'm sorry, that's not Patreon. That's our channel membership. Different program. Another great way to help the show. So that's channel membership. You want to become a member, hit the join button below. Patrons, let's go over to that. I'm going to thank Tira and Kyle Hensharik. So thank you for signing up to, of course, support independent progressive media. A couple of super chats here. Let's go to, a lot of them actually. Adrian Benefield says, it's Carly Jerk, not Charlie Kirk. Also, mob rules, what democracy should boil down to. The tyranny of the majority, as Republicans like to put it. So, but wait a minute. How can they be the silent majority, but then also be the minority? Doesn't make any sense now, does it? Nope. Star Trek, thank you with the incredibly kind $10. Goku Just Saying says, Gross Point Blank Antifa is secretly run by John Cusack, who just happens to be progressive. Yes. It's funny. Okay, so I'm on Twitter. I really don't have that many Twitter followers. You might want to help me with that. But I've had interactions with John. He is a huge progressive and Bernie Sanders supporter. And so that's kind of awesome. All right. Thank you for those super chats. Definitely appreciate them. The donations. Let's see. Hello over here on Twitch. Thank you, Uber Gardner. I'm having a fine day. Thank you. When did I start the show? Top of the hour. Zombie skincare. We start at 4 p.m. Eastern, or around about that time. Sometimes I'm like a few minutes late, just getting shit set up. But it's usually around 4 p.m. Eastern that we start. So, all right. Also a movie. All right. So let's get into a more disastrous story. Supervisors at Tyson Foods, at a Tyson Foods plant where over 1,000 workers were infected with COVID-19, are being accused of making wagers about the number of people that would get infected on the job. Now, this is according to a wrongful death lawsuit at Tyson's largest pork processing plant in Waterloo. Now, the family of Isidro Fernandez filed the lawsuit back in August, saying that Fernandez was exposed to the virus when he reported for work at the Tyson plant in Waterloo, Iowa. Fernandez died in April from COVID-19 complications, leaving behind a family. According to the lawsuit, Fernandez was one of at least 5 Waterloo plant employees who died of the virus. And as I said before, it infected more than 1,000 workers, or about a third of the facility's workforce, with coronavirus, according to the Black Hawk County Health Department. The lawsuit claims that Tyson is guilty of willful and wanton disregard for workplace safety and accuses the company of endangering employees by downplaying virus concerns and covering up the outbreak in order to keep them working. Well, if you are taking, wagers or making wagers on how many people are going to get sick after forcing them to come into work, then yeah, that's definitely willful and wanton disregard. Again, this is a disgusting story. It literally makes you sick, because this is our food supply, for one, and you have a company that's forcing people to come into work and then making them work in unsafe conditions in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, it's horrifying. And of course, you're not going to be surprised when you see, of course, the people who are working in these plants tend to be immigrants who are paid low wages. Because of course. I mean, so you've got a situation, right, where Tyson, like, they know what's going on in the plants. These supervisors know what's going on. And of course, they're going to blame the Trump administration for making them essential, which, again, yes, they did become essential until they were shut down from all these massive COVID infections, these COVID numbers. And so just because you're essential doesn't mean that you can't go and protect your employees. It actually means that you should protect your employees because you have a duty to do so that you can continue to make food or process food. I mean, again, this is absolutely disgusting in so many different ways. And so they refuse to protect their workers, for one, who are mainly immigrants from like South America or Mexico. And, you know, because of the racism, they start taking bets. The bosses take bets on how many people are going to get sick. Now, the lawsuit accuses plant manager Tom Hart of organizing a cash buy-in, winner-takes-all betting pool for supervisors and managers in mid-April to guess how many plant employees would test positive after being forced to report for work. According to the Capitol Dispatch review of the amended suit, the report betting pool occurred around the time that Blackhawk County Sheriff Tony Thompson visited the plant and said the working conditions shook him to the core. So these are terrible working conditions. Normally, they're terrible working conditions. And I've reported on that before. But with COVID-19, what was terrible actually turned into extremely bad working conditions. Now, another new allegation also details how upper-level plant manager John Casey explicitly told supervisors to continue showing up for work, even if they were experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, referring to the virus as a, quote, glorified flu, and telling workers, don't worry about it, everyone's going to get it. Why don't you just do the herd immunity? And this is Donald Trump's national plan. Came from this, okay? Herd immunity. We'll just let everybody get sick, and then, you know, still show up for work and still do your job. And if you die, you die. We don't really care. We can replace you. There's thousands of you that we can, we can bring them in and we can replace you. You are nothing. Your life does not matter to us at all. The only thing that matters to us is keeping the assembly lines going so that we can, make a profit. That's it. That's it. And so there's more too. According to the lawsuit, Casey stopped a sick supervisor on their way to getting tested and ordered them back to work, saying, quote, you have a job to do. Managers reportedly only allowed one employee who vomited on the production line to continue working and return to work the next day. Like, that's our food supply. Look, it's horrifying and absolutely disgusting. If anything, like that would make someone become a vegan, right there, and I wouldn't blame them at all. The pork industry is just the meat industry in this country. This is what happens in unregulated capitalism. Like we've seen the Trump administration roll back regulations for pork producers. This is a result. It's a direct result. And it's just, this is what's happening. And by the way, this particular plant remained open until they were shut down because their food, their meat, caused outbreaks in the community. Or maybe it wasn't the meat itself, but maybe it was the workers going back home and spreading that virus. And that's what's going on. And the worst thing is, look, more than 180 infections were linked to the plant by the time of its closure, according to the health department. And again, the worst thing is it didn't have to be like this. It didn't have to be like this. OSHA and the CDC had actually issued guidance at the beginning of the pandemic. Guidance that these companies should take into not just take into consideration, but actually set up and do if they want to remain operational and safe during this pandemic. And of course, that involved putting up physical barriers and enforcing social distancing. Now, the situations inside of these meatpacking plants are so bad that people generally stand side to side, shoulder to shoulder, basically, or close enough to it. So they're not doing social distancing. And of course, they have line speeds that are insanely fast and no barriers, dirty conditions all over the place. And so it's not a surprise that in a place like that, in an environment like that, that a virus like COVID-19 can spread and spread rapidly. And so these guidelines involved, again, hand sanitizing stations, real simple stuff. Barriers, hand sanitizer, social distancing, and even that was too much for them. That guidance was not mandatory and was mostly unenforceable, according to the article. So if it's unenforceable and not mandatory, then why would you do it? If you're a corporation that only cares about profit, as all corporations are, because corporations are nothing more than profit-making machines. We literally set them up for one purpose, to bring value to the shareholders. Okay? That's a corporation's job. They're a literal robot. They're a legal fiction. They don't exist as people. Okay? They're just a piece of paper. And that's what a corporation is. And so they're going to do what they are programmed to do. Their fiduciary responsibility is to bring value to the shareholders. That's why we have to have rules. That's why we need regulations. It's not to punish businesses. It's not to make them go out of business. It's to set rules so that when something happens, that or just say that so that stuff like this does not happen, so that we don't have food contamination, so that we don't have pork with eyeballs or I don't know if there's any eyeballs, but fingernails, feces, anything like that getting into the meat because the line speeds are too fast. No, you set the line speed at a particular speed, fast enough to be able to get your product out, obviously, but slow enough for the people to be able to effectively do their job when it comes to safety. But we don't do that anymore. Again, Trump and the Republicans consistently deregulate these industries. And that's why we have situations like this. I mean, and of course, that's also why workers get injured at a higher rate at these plants, because you have such unsafe conditions. But the reason that they get away with it is because the workforce to them is easily replaceable. They are disposable. Again, mostly people who are immigrants, who are poor, who work in these situations, in these places. And so this is the state of our, again, this is our food supply. This is the very basic thing that humans need for survival. And we can't even make sure that it's not only safe enough for workers to work there, but for people to eat the stuff. It's disgusting. And this is all about, unfortunately, it's all based on greed. All right. Let's move on. Let's go to something a little bit lighter again. Charlie Kirk recently went on a completely bonkers rant about leftists and Thanksgiving. Take a look.
The left has always hated Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving can be interpreted as a religious holiday if you believe in giving thanks to a creator. But they hate Thanksgiving because they believe there is nothing you should be thankful for in America. This is an awful place. It is cancerous, rotten to the core. Tear it all down. burn it from within. Why would you be thankful? Instead, we need a revolution.
Okay. So let me make something clear. As a leftist, I can say with certainty that Charlie Kirk is 100% full of shit. I personally enjoy Thanksgiving. I actually love getting together with family and eating good food. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Unless your family sucks, which then I can totally understand why you wouldn't want to spend time with them. But look, I realize, yes, among the left, we have this realization that there's a historical connotation and historical context behind the holiday that is both tragic and horrifying. That is, of course, the destruction of the Native American way of life, thanks to white settlers. We understand that. That doesn't mean that we can't enjoy the actual what has come out of that holiday. And so, again, white settlers raped and pillaged their way across the country. But the holiday itself is morphed from those origins into something different, to where it's basically just people getting together with your family, eating turkey and watching football. And that's basically it. And so it kind of is like how the meaning of Christmas essentially changed from honoring the alleged birth of Jesus Christ, which was not actually in December, but again, the reason they put it in December is to try to get the pagans in and all that stuff, to convert people to Christianity, blah, blah, blah. We know that. Of course, it's more from that to now what we see is basically people get together, they eat tons of food, and they engage in capitalism, giving each other stuff. And so, unfortunately, though, for us, this year, thanks to COVID, we can't do any of that. We just can't do any of that. That sucks. So I just want to say to the people who made that possible, fuck you, COVID deniers. Everybody who didn't wear a mask or do any social distancing because, it's not real. Oh, the virus, it's this glorified flu. It's not actually real. It's a conspiracy. Again, these are people who literally will get the virus, and then as they're dying, as they're gasping for breath in the hospital, will say, COVID-19 is a hoax. Fuck you guys. All right, you're the reason that millions of people this year will not be able to enjoy Thanksgiving with their family. And so I'm sorry, but fuck you guys for putting my family and friends at risk for getting coronavirus because you decided that you had a patriotic duty to eat it inside at an Applebee's. Sorry, but not sorry. All right. And look, the CDC just released guidance today, suggesting that people not travel or, gather together in large groups. That's good advice because, the virus is basically out of control in this country right now as a result of super spreader events hosted by, of course, Donald Trump, people getting together to protest. Look, I understand that people are tired of coronavirus. Yeah, it sucks. I don't want to miss out on Thanksgiving, but I actually give a shit about my family. And so I'm not going to go. We have to miss these, get-togethers now, getting together with family and friends because a bunch of dumbasses couldn't put on a fucking mask, a thin piece of cloth on their face to prevent their water droplets and spittle from drenching other people and filling the air with COVID. It just pisses me off. And so, no, we're not going to have a traditional Thanksgiving with family and friends because dumbasses like Charlie Kirk decided it was too much of an infringement on their freedom to do the suggested stuff so that now there has to be mask mandates and now there has to be, some lockdowns and all that stuff. And look, we could choose to gather into small groups, but again, I care about my family too much to possibly expose them or myself to coronavirus. Now, the question I would ask Trump supporters is, do you actually give a shit about your family? Do you? If so, you might want to think twice about, having a large get-together because it will probably end badly. So, yeah, look, anyway, Charlie Kirk is 100% wrong about lefties hating Thanksgiving. Now, again, there's a historical context around that. The killing and displacement of indigenous populations is both a horrible crime and a horrible legacy. And understand that, like, as a result of this, indigenous communities suffer today. And maybe we should actually do something to help those indigenous communities. That would be nice. But he's also wrong about having, nothing to be thankful for, about leftists not being thankful. No, I'm thankful for my health. And it's a result, of course, me, whenever I go out, wearing a mask to make sure that I do not infect others, and that if others wear masks, that they do not infect me. That's the only reason. That's the only way that mask wearing actually works, is if everyone does it, so that we are all protecting each other. All right. And I am thankful for my family, even if I can't see them in person this holiday, which sucks. We at least have technology that allows us to not be alone in the holidays. And I'm thankful for Donald Trump not getting a second term in office, so that, maybe we can actually have competent leadership that will help us get rid of the virus. And also, of course, the possibility of a vaccine. I believe AstraZeneca is the third company to come out with a promising vaccine that is, again, promised to work. And so we've got now 3 different companies that are looking to manufacture these vaccines and get them out to people. It still will take a while, but maybe, just maybe, I don't know, if this administration decides to hand over and sign off as soon as possible and certify the election, and let, the adults in the room get to work, maybe we can eventually next year be able to actually have a Thanksgiving and a Christmas season. It would be nice. And of course, that would be no thanks to people like Donald Trump and morons like Charlie fucking Kirk. All right. Let me see if I can do one more real quick, I guess. Yeah, I'm not fucking around. It's true. It's true. By the way, let me go to Twitch here. Thank you, Kathy, for the cheer. Much appreciated for the 100 biddies. All right. The Trump administration is working on a last-ditch effort to push through dozens of environmental rollbacks before they end up leaving office. So now, this is basically another middle finger, this time to the environment, and a gift to corporations. As always, Trump's deregulation could weaken century-old protections for migratory birds, expand drilling in the Arctic Circle, and hamstring future regulation of public health threats. So now there is an article in Huffington Post of which some of the changes were detailed in. So let's start with, of course, the migratory birds. Now you might think, I don't give a shit about migratory birds. I don't give a shit about wildlife. Well then, okay, then this obviously is not for you. And you're probably a sociopath. But for those of you who do care about companies being held liable for killing wildlife, then you would be interested in hearing about this regulation. Now, right now you have the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. And basically, it allows for the protection of more than 1,000 species of migratory birds that include hawks and other birds of prey. And federal prosecutors have used this act to recover damages, including about $100 million from BP for its oil rig spill into the Gulf of Mexico, which is used, of course, to clean up said disasters. That actually killed about more than 100,000 seabirds. And so basically, it's holding these companies accountable when you have whether it be an accident or a planning mistake or, something like that, that these companies will then pay into a fund to help clean it up. And so, hey, if you make a mess, you fucking clean it up. That's what I was taught as a kid. All right. These corporations should have to abide by those same rules. All right. And so now Trump wants to get rid of it. He says, no, let's restrict criminal prosecution for industries responsible for the deaths of nation's migratory birds. And so the Trump administration wants to make sure that there's no criminal liability whatsoever. So now, as I said before, not all the deaths are malicious. A lot of it's just like accidental or these companies being super cheap. And then there's, of course, other situations. For example, oil pipelines, right? We know oil pipelines leak. They leak all the fucking time. In fact, that was one of the concerns with the Dakota Access Pipeline. They said, it's going to leak. It's going to leak. And where you're building it, it's going to leak and damage the environment. And sure enough, we've had multiple leaks within the last couple of years in the parts of the Dakota Access Pipeline that have been built. So, and so, look, when it leaks, it destroys habitats. It destroys some of the areas for these migratory birds and other animals. It poisons water supplies. And so it's a serious problem. The Trump administration says, don't care. Go ahead and not only build the pipelines, but when they inevitably burst, you don't have to pay for them. You don't have to be held criminally liable for any of this. And so, yeah, that's a problem. Okay. And so, nonetheless, they build these pipelines in these places anyway, because, they want to cheap out and use as little material as possible. And so if it has to go over an aquifer, for example, or a habitat for a species of birds that might be on the cusp of being, endangered, they don't care. Build it anyway, they say. Well, this Migratory Bird Act would either stop it from being built in that particular location, or if it does burst and destroy that location and harm those birds, that they would be liable for that. That's why the administration has allowed these lobbyists to come in and basically give them, a money or whatever in order to have them rescind these rules. In fact, Rachel Jones, vice president of the National Association of Manufacturers, said that this was an important one. She said Jones had lobbied for the changes in the Migratory Bird Treaty Act at a meeting last year between private sector representatives and staff in the White House and Interior Department. She says it really matters in relation to the infrastructure we need for a modern society. We have to do it. Fuck the birds, basically. Fuck the birds. I mean, we need the infrastructure. Fuck the birds. All right, well, it's funny because she says we're a modern society and we need the infrastructure, right? Are we really a modern society if we are still using a 200-year-old source of fuel that has been proven to be both destructive to the environment and toxic to not only human health, but also to the health of the environment that it is in? I mean, I'm just saying, it's not like we don't have technologies that we can utilize, that we can really invest in order to make it so that we don't have to use this incredibly, dirty, toxic fuel source. Just saying. We should transition away from that. But it's very clear that, of course, Donald Trump is captive to the industry, probably because he hates alternative energy. I mean, look at how he talks about windmills. Did they give you cancer? The windmills, the noise, the rear gives you cancer. No, it doesn't. I cannot believe a sitting president would sit there and say, windmills give you cancer. That is the most ridiculous. Like that was in the realm of satire not too long ago. Insane. Completely insane. Now, the article points out that the Trump administration has also done many similar moves to deregulate oil and gas that have been facing court challenges. They, for example, removed protections for millions of miles of waterways and wetlands. They removed narrow protections for wildlife species facing extinction and had opened more of the hundreds of millions of acres of public land to oil and gas drilling. And another proposal that arrived at the White House last week would set emission standards for small but dangerous particles of pollution emitted by refineries and other industrial sources. Just allowing these companies to pollute our airways. Who cares? Well, we do. We got to breathe this. We got to breathe this. All right. Now, other changes would allow more drilling and mining on thousands of square miles of public lands around Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. That is a national historic park, and of course, in the Alaskan wilderness. Now, environmentalists, of course, and former federal officials say the actions being taken are reflective of a pro-industry agenda, but taken to an extreme. In disregard for imperiled wildlife, climate change, and damage to human health from air pollution. David Hayes, former Deputy Secretary of the Interior under Obama, said this, quote, "What we're seeing at the end is what we've seen all along, which is a fealty to private interests over public interests." Well, he's 100% right about that. They seem intent on finalizing these as a kind of ideological point. Yeah, it is a fuck the libs mentality. And that's what it is, essentially. Which isn't all surprising and is 100% on brand for somebody like Donald Trump. But just like some of the last minute changes, they are you can undo them, right? So now Joe Biden can undo these, depending on, of course, where they are in the process. If they're pending, he can just halt them. If they're already, if they've already gone through the process, then he would have to go through Congress, which is why Georgia is really important. But also the other question is, though, speaking of Biden, is how invested, how committed is he to protecting the environment? I actually think he will be a little mixed. So now, look, on the one hand, we're going back to the Paris Climate Accord. Now, I've said before, it's weak. It's non-binding, but okay. Now, he also plans on spending somewhere around $2 trillion on the climate. I'll believe it when I see it, right? So with the Biden administration, would we go backwards? Not necessarily. Would we go forward? Not really. I believe the phrase "nothing will fundamentally change" comes to mind. Again, he just put a fossil fuel executive into his cabinet. Not a good sign. Not a good sign. So we need bold action on the climate. We need something better. And again, I see what Biden is promising and what he promised during the campaign. But as we all know, generally, politicians will make promises and immediately go back on it. And so the jury's out on that one. I don't think he's going to deliver. I would be surprised if he did. And I would be encouraged if he did. So that said, it may not be any sort of forward progress, but Donald Trump is literally trying to set the planet on fire before he leaves. So I guess, we have to take what we can get at the moment. All right. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Please subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe. Become a paying subscriber on Twitch. All of that, again, goes to help the show and help us continue spreading the progressive message and all that wonderful stuff. Become a patron. Follow me on Twitter, of course. All that good stuff. Till then, till tomorrow, last show in the week. Please stay safe, stay sane, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See y'all later.
There's some whores in this house. Wet ass P-word.
Listen, mates. Thailand. Burmisia, they say, pronounce it Burmisia. A real beautiful company.
Amazing.
Please clap. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.